Have you ever replayed a conversation in your head 50 times, analyzing every word you said? Have you lain awake at night creating disaster scenarios that will probably never happen? Do you make simple decisions complicated by thinking through every possible outcome? Have you paralyzed yourself with what-ifs until you couldn't take action at all? Are you exhausted from the constant mental chatter that never seems to stop? Have you watched opportunities pass by because you were too busy overthinking them? Do you know exactly what you should do but can't stop analyzing whether it's the right choice? Have you turned small problems into catastrophes just by thinking about them too much? What if I told you that overthinking isn't protecting you from mistakes? It's destroying your ability to live. You're not alone in this mental prison. Millions of people are trapped in the same cycle. They think themselves into anxiety, into paralysis, into misery. They believe that more thinking equals better decisions, that analyzing every angle keeps them safe, that preparing for every scenario prevents disaster, so they think and think and think, until they're so tangled in their own thoughts that they can't move forward. They've confused thinking with action, planning with progress, analysis with wisdom. And meanwhile, life is passing them by, not because they're incapable, but because they're trapped in their heads, running simulations of life instead of actually living it. The problem isn't that you think too much. Thinking is good. Analysis is valuable. The problem is that your thinking has become compulsive. You can't turn it off. You can't stop the loop. What started as helpful problem solving has become a mental addiction. You overthink because it feels productive. It feels like you're doing something, like you're preparing, like you're being careful and responsible. But here's the truth. Overthinking is not preparation. It's procrastination dressed up as productivity. It's fear masquerading as caution. It's anxiety pretending to be wisdom. And it's keeping you stuck in a prison of your own making. You're not protecting yourself. You're paralyzing yourself. Here's what happens if nothing changes. Today, you'll overthink another decision and miss another opportunity. Tomorrow, you'll replay another conversation until you've convinced yourself everyone hates you. Next week, you'll be exhausted from the mental gymnastics but no closer to taking action. Next month, you'll still be analyzing the same problems you're analyzing now. And a year from now, you'll look back and realize you spent an entire year thinking about your life instead of living it. The anxiety will be worse because you'll have more evidence that overthinking doesn't work. The paralysis will be deeper because you'll have proven to yourself that you can't make decisions. The regret will be heavier because you'll see how much time you wasted. That's the cost of staying stuck in your head. That's what's at stake. Not just your peace of mind, your entire life. Here's what neuroscientists won't tell you. Your brain wasn't designed for the modern world. It evolved to handle immediate physical threats. Predator in the bushes. Think fast, act fast, survive. But modern threats aren't immediate or physical. They're abstract, future-based, social. And your ancient brain doesn't know how to handle them, so it does what it knows. It loops. It rehearses. It simulates, trying to predict and prepare for every possible threat. This was useful when threats were simple and immediate. It's destructive when threats are complex and hypothetical. Your brain is running a program designed for a completely different environment, and that program is breaking you. This isn't speculation. Neuroscientists studying rumination found that repetitive negative thinking literally changes your brain structure. It strengthens the neural pathways associated with anxiety and weakens those associated with emotional regulation. Psychologists confirm that overthinking doesn't lead to better decisions. It leads to decision fatigue and paralysis. Researchers found that people who ruminate are more likely to develop depression and anxiety disorders. Your overthinking isn't making you smarter or safer. It's making you sick. And the longer you do it, the harder it becomes to stop. Because you're literally rewiring your brain to default to overthinking. Here's what the self-help industry won't tell you. You can't think your way out of overthinking. You can't analyze your way to peace. Trying to solve overthinking with more thinking is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. The solution isn't better thoughts, it's less thinking. Not no thinking, less thinking. Strategic thinking instead of compulsive thinking. Decisive thinking instead of endless rumination. And the only way to get there is to understand the mechanics of overthinking and interrupt the cycle. Not with positive thinking, not with affirmations, but with concrete neurological interventions that actually work. Here's exactly what's going to happen in the next hour. Right now, you're trapped in thought loops, unable to turn off the mental chatter, paralyzed by analysis. In the first chapter, you're going to understand what overthinking actually is and why your brain does it. You'll learn the neurological basis of rumination. Then, you're going to learn how to identify your specific overthinking patterns, because you can't interrupt what you don't recognize. Next, you'll discover the 5 techniques that actually stop overthinking in its tracks. Not positive thinking, real interventions based on neuroscience. After that, you'll learn how to make decisions without endless analysis. This is where you move from paralysis to action. And finally, you'll learn how to build a brain that defaults to calm instead of chaos. By the end, you'll have a complete framework for breaking free from overthinking. You'll know exactly what's happening in your brain and how to interrupt it. By the end of this audiobook, you'll have clarity on why you overthink and what triggers it. You'll have specific techniques to interrupt the cycle when it starts. You'll have a decision-making framework that bypasses analysis paralysis. You'll have strategies for building long-term mental calm. You won't lie awake replaying conversations because you'll know how to stop the loop. You won't paralyze yourself with what-ifs because you'll have tools to move forward. You won't be exhausted from mental chatter because you'll have learned to quiet it. What you will feel is free, clear, like you've been released from a prison you didn't know you could escape, like your mind is finally working for you instead of against you. And if you don't feel significantly less trapped in your head after this hour, then I've failed you. But I won't, because this works. So here's the real question, not whether you'll finish this audiobook, but who you'll be when you do. Will you be someone who listens and goes back to overthinking, who understands the concepts but doesn't apply them, who stays trapped because it's familiar? Or will you be someone who interrupts one thought loop today, who makes one decision without endless analysis, who looks back on today as the day you started breaking free? You get to decide, but you can't decide later. Because every moment you spend overthinking is a moment you're not living. Every decision you paralyze is an opportunity you miss. Every thought loop you run is rewiring your brain to run more loops. So what's it going to be? More of the same mental torture or freedom? The choice is yours, but you have to choose now. You have 1 hour, 60 minutes, less time than you'll spend overthinking today. Less time than you'll spend replaying one conversation, but enough time to learn how overthinking actually works and how to stop it. The next hour is going to separate you from the version of yourself that's trapped in mental loops, exhausted by analysis, paralyzed by what-ifs. You're either all in or you're out. There's no half listening. No, this is interesting, but I won't change. Now is when it starts. Right now. Take a breath. Notice your thoughts right now. That's your baseline, the noise you've been living with. In 1 hour, you'll know how to turn down the volume, how to interrupt the loops, how to think strategically instead of compulsively. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Neuroscience of Overthinking. Let's start with what overthinking actually is. It's not deep thinking. It's not problem solving. It's not planning. Those are productive. Overthinking is repetitive, unproductive thought about the past or future that doesn't lead to solutions or action. It's your brain running the same simulation over and over, getting nowhere. Psychologists call this rumination, and it's one of the most destructive mental habits you can have. Here's what's happening in your brain when you overthink. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for complex thinking and decision-making, gets locked in a loop. It's trying to solve a problem. But the problem is either unsolvable, already solved, or not actually a problem, so it keeps trying and trying and trying. Meanwhile, your amygdala, your fear center, is activated, because overthinking is usually about threats, real or imagined. So you're in a state of chronic low-level threat activation. Your stress hormones are elevated. Your body is in mild fight or flight, and this becomes your baseline. You're not thinking clearly. You're thinking anxiously. Let me explain the difference between productive thinking and overthinking. Productive thinking has a goal. You're solving a problem, making a decision, planning an action. And once you've reached a conclusion, you stop. You move to action. Overthinking has no endpoint. You think about the same thing repeatedly without reaching a conclusion. Or you reach a conclusion but don't trust it, so you keep thinking. Or you solve one problem and immediately create 3 more hypothetical problems to solve. There's no finish line. The thinking is circular, not linear. Here's why your brain does this. Evolutionarily, thinking about threats kept us alive. If you encountered a dangerous situation, remembering it and thinking about how to avoid it next time was adaptive. So your brain rewards you for thinking about threats. It feels productive, but modern threats aren't like ancient threats. Ancient threats were immediate and solvable. Fight the predator, run from the danger. Modern threats are abstract and ongoing. What if I lose my job? What if they don't like me? What if I make the wrong choice? These aren't immediately solvable, so your brain keeps looping, trying to solve the unsolvable. Now let's talk about the specific types of overthinking. Type 1, rumination about the past, replaying conversations, analyzing mistakes, wishing you'd done something differently. This is your brain trying to change something that can't be changed. It's trying to learn from the past, but it's overdoing it. 1, analysis, useful, 50, destructive. Type 2, worry about the future. What if this happened? What if that goes wrong? What's the worst case scenario? This is your brain trying to prepare for threats. But it's creating threats that don't exist. You're not preparing, you're catastrophizing. Type 3, analysis paralysis. Overanalyzing decisions. considering every possible option and outcome, weighing every pro and con endlessly. This is your brain trying to make the perfect choice, but perfection is impossible, so you never choose, you stay stuck. Type 4 social overthinking. What did they mean by that? Do they like me? Did I say something wrong? This is your brain trying to ensure social acceptance. But it's making you hypersensitive to social cues that might not mean what you think they mean. Here's what all these types have in common. They're your brain trying to control the uncontrollable. You can't change the past. You can't predict the future. You can't make perfect decisions. You can't control what others think. But your brain keeps trying. Because trying feels safer than accepting uncertainty. Overthinking is a control strategy. It just doesn't work. Now let's talk about the neurological cost of chronic overthinking. When you overthink repeatedly, you strengthen certain neural pathways. The pathway from neutral stimulus to threat interpretation gets stronger, so you see more threats. The pathway from problem to anxiety gets stronger, so you feel more anxious. The pathway from decision to doubt gets stronger, so you trust yourself less. You're literally training your brain to overthink. Every time you run the loop, you make the loop easier to run next time. This is neuroplasticity working against you. Additionally, chronic overthinking depletes your cognitive resources. Your brain has limited mental energy. When you spend it on rumination, you don't have it for actual problem solving, creativity, or presence. You're cognitively exhausted. This is why overthinkers often feel mentally drained but haven't actually accomplished anything. Their energy went to mental spinning. Let's address the role of anxiety. Overthinking and anxiety feed each other. Anxiety makes you overthink because you're trying to find safety through analysis. Overthinking makes you more anxious because you're constantly act. Evading your threat system. It's a vicious cycle. Break one and you affect the other. This is why techniques that interrupt overthinking also reduce anxiety. Here's another important piece. Overthinking often masks avoidance. You're not ready to make the decision, so you keep thinking about it. You don't want to face the uncomfortable conversation, so you replay it instead. You're afraid to take action, so you analyze instead. Overthinking feels productive, so it's a socially acceptable form of procrastination. But it's still procrastination. You're avoiding the thing you actually need to do by thinking about it endlessly. Now the role of perfectionism. Perfectionists overthink because they're trying to find the perfect solution, the perfect words, the perfect choice. But perfect doesn't exist, so they never finish thinking. They're always looking for the option they haven't considered yet, the risk they haven't assessed, the angle they haven't analyzed. This is exhausting and unproductive. Good enough is often actually good enough. But perfectionists can't accept that, so they think themselves into paralysis. Let's talk about the illusion of control. Overthinking creates the illusion that you're doing something, that you're preparing, that you're being responsible, but you're not. You're just activating your stress response repeatedly without taking action. Real control comes from decisive action, not endless analysis. When you overthink, you feel like you're in control because you're thinking through everything. But you're actually less in control because you're not acting. You're paralyzed by your own analysis. Here's what you need to understand. Your brain isn't broken. It's doing what it thinks it's supposed to do, protecting you, preparing you, keeping you safe. The problem is it's overcompensating. It's using a sledgehammer when you need a scalpel. Your job isn't to hate your brain for overthinking. It's to understand why it's doing it and redirect it, not through force, through understanding and technique. Finally, overthinking is a habit. Like any habit, it has a cue, a routine, and a reward. The cue is usually uncertainty or threat, real or perceived. The routine is rumination. The reward is temporary anxiety relief and the feeling of doing something productive. To break the habit, you need to interrupt the routine and find a different way to get the reward. That's what we're going to learn. How to recognize when you're starting to overthink and what to do instead. In the next chapter, we're going to identify your specific overthinking patterns. Chapter 2. Identifying your overthinking patterns. You understand what overthinking is and why your brain does it. Now let's get specific. What are your particular patterns? Because you can't interrupt what you don't recognize, and everyone overthinks differently. Let's start by identifying your triggers. What situations, emotions, or thoughts consistently lead to overthinking? For many people, it's uncertainty, ambiguous situations where the outcome isn't clear. For others, it's social interactions. Did I make a good impression? What did they think? For some, it's mistakes, real or perceived failures that get replayed endlessly. For others, it's big decisions, choices that feel high stakes. Identify your triggers. When do you most consistently fall into overthinking? Now your time of day. When do you overthink most? Many people overthink at night, lying in bed unable to sleep, replaying the day or worrying about tomorrow. Some overthink in the morning before they've even started the day. Some overthink during transitions, commuting, waiting, downtime. When does your brain tend to start looping? Knowing this lets you prepare. You can implement interventions before the overthinking starts. Let's identify your content themes. What do you overthink about? Is it relationships, work, health, finances, your worth, your future? Most people have specific themes that their overthinking gravitates toward. You might replay social interactions but never worry about money, or constantly worry about health but rarely ruminate about work. Identify your themes. This helps you recognize when overthinking is starting. Oh, I'm doing the relationship overthinking again. Now your physical sensations. Overthinking isn't just mental, it has physical components. Tension in your jaw, shoulders, or stomach, restlessness, fatigue, headaches, racing heart. What does overthinking feel like in your body? When you can recognize the physical sensation, you can catch overthinking earlier, before you're fully in the loop. Your body often signals overthinking before you're consciously aware of it. Let's talk about your thought patterns. How does your overthinking manifest? Some people ask endless what-if questions. What if this? What if that? Some people replay events like a mental video, analyzing every detail. Some people have imaginary conversations, rehearsing what they'll say or what they should have said. Some people make lists of everything that could go wrong. What's your pattern? Recognizing the specific thought structure helps you identify it faster. Here's an important distinction: past-focused versus future-focused overthinking. Are you more likely to ruminate about things that already happened, conversations you had, mistakes you made, things you should have done differently? Or are you more likely to worry about things that haven't happened yet, future scenarios, potential problems, decisions you need to make? Many people do both, but usually one dominates. Knowing which helps you choose the right intervention. Now your decision-making patterns. When you need to make a decision, what happens? Do you research endlessly, always looking for more information? Do you make pro-con lists that keep growing? Do you ask everyone you know for advice and then feel more confused? Do you make a decision and then immediately second-guess it? Do you avoid deciding entirely by telling yourself you need more time to think? How does overthinking show up in your decision-making? Let's identify your rumination loops. These are the specific thoughts you return to over and over. I'm not good enough. What if I fail? They probably think I'm stupid. I always mess things up. Everyone has specific thoughts that their brain loops on. What are yours? Write them down. Once you can name them, you can recognize them. Oh, there's the I'm not good enough loop again. This creates distance. You're not your thoughts, you're observing them. Here's a crucial pattern to identify. Do you overthink to avoid feeling? Sometimes overthinking is a distraction from uncomfortable emotions. You're anxious, but instead of feeling the anxiety, you think about why you're anxious. You're sad, but instead of feeling sad, you analyze why you're sad. You're angry, but instead of feeling anger, you ruminate about the situation. Thinking about emotions is easier than feeling them. Is this you? If so, your overthinking serves a specific function: emotional avoidance. Recognizing this changes how you address it. Now your relationship with uncertainty. How do you handle not knowing? Some people can sit with uncertainty. They accept that they don't know what will happen and they're okay with that. Others cannot tolerate uncertainty. They need answers. They need to know. So they think and think, trying to create certainty where none exists. Where are you on this spectrum? If uncertainty is intolerable for you, much of your overthinking is an attempt to manufacture certain. Tie through analysis. But you can't think your way to certainty about uncertain things. Let's talk about your perfectionism level. Perfectionists overthink because they're trying to find the perfect solution, the perfect choice, the perfect words. How perfectionistic are you? Do you redo things multiple times? Do you struggle to complete tasks because they're never quite good enough? Do you beat yourself up over small mistakes? Perfectionism and overthinking are closely linked. If perfectionism is high, your overthinking is likely driven by impossible standards. Here's another pattern. Do you overthink alone or do you externalize it? Some people keep all the overthinking internal. They ruminate silently. Others talk through their overthinking. They call friends. They seek reassurance. They verbally process the same thoughts over and over. Neither is better or worse, but knowing which you do helps. If you externalize, you might be using other people to enable your overthinking. If you internalize, you might be isolating yourself in your rumination. Now your response to overthinking. When you notice you're overthinking, what do? Some people try to think their way out. They add more analysis. This doesn't work. Some people distract themselves. This works temporarily but doesn't address the pattern. Some people judge themselves. I'm so stupid for overthinking. This adds shame to the mix, making it worse. Some people just accept it as inevitable. This is how I am. This creates learned helplessness. What's your response? If it's not working, you need a different approach. Finally, your overthinking intensity and frequency. Is this something that happens occasionally or is it constant? Do you have days where you're relatively calm or is it all day every day? How intense is it? Mildly annoying or completely debilitating? This helps you understand the severity and guides intervention. Mild, Occasional overthinking might respond to simple awareness. Severe, chronic overthinking might need more intensive intervention and possibly professional support. Here's why all this identification matters. You can't change a pattern you can't see. Most people overthink unconsciously. It starts and they're in it before they realize. By identifying your specific patterns, triggers, themes, and responses, you create awareness. And awareness is the first step to change. Once you can recognize I'm starting to overthink, you can intervene. Without recognition, you're just swept along by the pattern. With recognition, you have choice. In the next chapter, we're going to learn specific techniques to interrupt overthinking when you recognize it starting. Chapter 3: 5 Techniques to Stop Overthinking. You can recognize your overthinking patterns. Now let's learn how to interrupt them. These aren't positive thinking tricks. These are neuroscience-based interventions that actually work. Let's start with Technique 1, the circuit breaker. When you notice overthinking starting, you need to break the neural circuit. The most effective way, physical intervention. Your brain and body are connected. When you change your physical state, you change your mental state. Here's what to do. The moment you recognize overthinking, do something physical. Stand up, walk, do 20 jumping jacks, splash cold water on your face, change your environment, go outside. The key is immediate physical action. This interrupts the neural loop. Why this works? Overthinking happens in the prefrontal cortex. Physical activity activates different brain regions, motor cortex, sensory areas. This shifts neural resources away from rumination. Additionally, movement regulates your nervous system. If you're in anxious overthinking, movement helps discharge that energy. You're literally breaking the circuit. This isn't distraction, it's neural interruption. And it's most effective when done immediately. The longer you stay in the loop, the harder it is to break. Technique 2, the 5-minute rule. When you catch yourself overthinking, set a timer for 5 minutes. During those 5 minutes, you can think about the issue all you want. But when the timer goes off, you're done, you move on. No exceptions. This works because overthinking feels urgent, like you have to figure it out right now. The 5-minute rule acknowledges the urge but contains it. You're not suppressing the thoughts, you're time-boxing them. Most people find that 5 minutes of focused thinking is actually enough to reach whatever conclusion they're going to reach. The other 45 minutes of rumination adds nothing. Here's how to use it. When overthinking starts, say to yourself, I'm going to think about this for 5 minutes and then I'm done. Set a timer. Think. When it goes off, physically stand up, take a breath, and move to something else. If your brain protests, remind it, I gave this 5 minutes. That's enough. Over time, this trains your brain that thinking has limits, that you don't need endless analysis. That 5 minutes is sufficient. Technique 3, the decision matrix. This is specifically for decision-related overthinking. When you're stuck in analysis paralysis, unable to decide, use this. Write down the decision. Write down your top 2 or 3 options. For each option, write 1 sentence about the best outcome and 1 sentence about the worst outcome. Then ask yourself 3 questions. Which option aligns with my values? Which option will I regret least if it goes wrong? Which option would I choose if I had to decide in 60 seconds? Your gut reaction to that last question is usually your answer. Here's why this works. Overthinking tries to eliminate all risk and uncertainty. Impossible. The decision matrix acknowledges that every choice has risk. You're not trying to find the perfect option. You're choosing the best available option given imperfect information. This removes the perfectionism that fuels analysis paralysis. Additionally, the 60-second question accesses your intuition. Your gut often knows before your brain does, but overthinking drowns out that signal. This technique surfaces it. Technique 4, thought labeling. This is a mindfulness technique backed by neuroscience. When you notice a thought, label it. Don't engage with it, just label it. That's a worry thought. That's a rumination about the past. That's catastrophizing. Then let it pass, don't argue with it. Don't analyze it, just label and release. This creates distance between you and your thoughts. You're not your thoughts, you're the observer of your thoughts. Why this works? When you engage with overthinking, you feed it. When you label it, you observe it without engagement. Neuroscientists found that labeling emotions and thoughts activates the prefrontal cortex in a way that reduces amygdala activity. In simple terms, labeling calms your threat response. You're not suppressing the thoughts. You're acknowledging them without getting pulled into the loop. Practice this consistently and you'll notice thoughts lose their power. They're just thoughts. They come and go. You don't have to follow them. Technique 5. The worry appointment. If you have chronic worry or rumination, schedule it. Literally put it on your calendar. 10 a.m. every day, 15 minutes of designated worry time. During that time, you write down every worry, every rumination. Get it all out. When the 15 minutes are up, you stop. Throughout the day, when worries pop up, you tell yourself, not now. I'll think about that at my worry appointment. Then you redirect your attention. This works for several reasons. It contains the overthinking. Instead of ruminating all day, you concentrate it into a specific time. It also externalizes it. Writing worries down gets them out of your head. And interestingly, most people find that when the worry appointment arrives, the worries feel less urgent, or they've resolved themselves, or they realize the same worries keep appearing, which shows the thoughts are repetitive, not productive. This builds awareness of the pattern. Now let's talk about implementation. These techniques work, but only if you actually use them. Here's how. Start with one technique. Don't try all 5 at once. Pick the one that resonates most. Practice it for a week. Every time you notice overthinking, use that technique. It will feel awkward at first. That's normal. You're interrupting a deeply ingrained pattern. Your brain will resist. Do it anyway. After a week, evaluate, is it helping? If yes, keep using it and consider adding another technique. If no, try a different one. Different techniques work for different people. Here's what to expect. The first few times you use a technique, overthinking might resume quickly. That's okay. You're building a new neural pathway. Interrupting the loop even briefly is progress. Each time you do it, you're weakening the overthinking pathway and strengthening the intervention pathway. Over time, the interventions become automatic. You'll catch overthinking earlier. You'll break the loop faster. Eventually, overthinking will happen less frequently because you've trained your brain that it doesn't work. Let me address a common concern. But what if I need to think about this? What if it's actually important? Here's the distinction. Important thinking has a purpose and leads to action. Overthinking is circular and leads to paralysis. If you're thinking about something important, 5 minutes of focused thinking will get you to next steps. If after 5 minutes you're still looping with no clear action, it's overthinking. Use a technique to break it. Trust that if it's genuinely important, you can return to it with focused thinking later. But right now, you need to interrupt the loop. Also, these techniques don't erase the thoughts. They interrupt the compulsive rumination. Thoughts will still come. That's normal. Brains generate thoughts. The goal isn't to eliminate thoughts. It's to stop engaging with unproductive thought loops. Thoughts can come and go without you getting pulled into rumination. That's mental freedom, not empty mind, flexible mind. Finally, be patient with yourself. Overthinking is a habit you've probably had for years. Breaking it takes time. You won't be perfect. You'll forget to use techniques. You'll get pulled into loops. That's part of the process. What matters is that you're building awareness and practicing intervention. Each time you successfully interrupt overthinking, you're changing your brain. Literally, neuroplasticity in action. You're weakening old pathways and building new ones. Stay consistent and trust the process. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about making decisions without endless analysis. Chapter 4: Decisive Thinking. You've learned to interrupt overthinking. Now let's learn to make decisions without falling into analysis paralysis. Because overthinking often happens in decision-making. You want to make the right choice. So you analyze endlessly. Let's fix that. First, understand that there's rarely one perfect choice. Most decisions have multiple acceptable options. The goal isn't to find perfect. It's to choose good enough and move forward. Perfection is the enemy of decision. Here's the framework. For any decision, ask yourself, is this reversible or irreversible? Reversible decisions can be changed. You can course correct. These should be made quickly. Don't overthink them. Choose, act, adjust if needed. Irreversible decisions have permanent consequences. These deserve more thought. But even these don't need endless analysis. They need focused analysis with a deadline. Let me give you examples. Reversible decisions: what to eat for lunch, what movie to watch, which route to take to work, what to wear. These have minimal lasting impact. Choose quickly. Don't spend 15 minutes deciding what to order. Pick something reasonable and move on. Your brain wants to treat every decision like it's life or death. It's not. Most decisions are low stakes. Treat them that way. Irreversible decisions: choosing a career path, deciding to get married, buying a house, having children. These have significant long-term impact. They deserve careful thought, but even these need boundaries. Set a decision deadline. I'll decide by Friday. Then gather relevant information. Consider your values and priorities. Make a choice by the deadline. Trust yourself. You can't guarantee the outcome, but you can make the best choice with available information. That's all anyone can do. Now the information threshold. Many overthinkers believe more information leads to better decisions. This is false beyond a certain point. Research shows that after you have enough information to make an informed choice, additional information doesn't improve decision quality. It just increases anxiety and delays action. Learn to recognize when you have enough information. You don't need to read 50 articles. You need to read enough to understand the key considerations. Then decide. Here's a practical rule. The 80% rule. If you have 80% of the information you think you need, you have enough to decide. The final 20% will likely not change your decision, and the time you spend gathering it could be spent acting. Apply this. When you're researching a decision, ask yourself, do I have enough information to make a reasonable choice? If yes, stop researching and decide. Let's talk about the role of intuition. Your gut feeling is valuable. It's not random. It's your brain processing information below conscious awareness. When you have a gut feeling about a decision, pay attention. But overthinkers don't trust their gut. They override it with analysis. Here's the balance. Use analysis for gathering information and understanding options. Use intuition for the final choice. After you've analyzed, ask yourself, what does my gut say? Then trust it. Here's a technique. The 10-10-10 rule. When making a decision, ask yourself 3 questions. How will I feel about this 10 minutes from now? 10 months from now? 10 years from now? This gives perspective. Many decisions that feel enormous in the moment are insignificant long-term. If something won't matter in 10 months, don't spend hours agonizing over it. If it will matter in 10 years, give it appropriate consideration. But even then, set a deadline and decide. Now, dealing with doubt after deciding. Overthinkers often make a decision and then immediately second-guess it. They look for evidence they chose wrong. They replay the decision. This is post-decision rumination, and it's as unproductive as pre-decision rumination. Here's how to handle it. After you make a decision, commit to it for a specific period. I'm going to commit to this choice for 3 months before I reevaluate. During those 3 months, when doubt arises, remind yourself, I made this choice with the best information I had. I'm committed to seeing it through. This stops the second-guessing loop. Let's address the fear of making wrong choices. Overthinkers are terrified of mistakes, so they try to avoid them through exhaustive analysis. But here's the truth. You will make wrong choices. Everyone does. The goal isn't to never be wrong. It's to make reasonable decisions with available information and learn from outcomes. Mistakes aren't failures. They're data. When you remove the fear of being wrong, decision-making becomes much easier. Here's a reframe. Instead of asking, what's the right choice? Ask, what's a good choice I can live with? This removes the pressure of perfection. You're not looking for right. You're looking for acceptable. Multiple options might be acceptable. Pick one and move forward. The time you save by not endlessly analyzing can be spent actually living your life. Now let's talk about values-based decision-making. When you're unclear about a decision, return to your values. What's most important to you? Family, freedom, security, growth, adventure. When you know your values, decisions become clearer. Choose the option that aligns with your values. This doesn't guarantee the outcome you want, but it guarantees you're being true to yourself. And that removes a lot of regret, even if things don't go as planned. Here's a practical decision-making process. Step 1. Define the decision clearly. What exactly am I choosing? Step 2. Identify your top options, usually 2 or 3. More than 5 is overwhelming. Step 3. Gather essential information, enough to understand each option, not everything that exists. Step 4. Consider each option against your values and priorities. Step 5. Check your gut. What does intuition say? Step 6. Choose. Step 7. Commit to the choice for a defined period before reevaluating. This process takes hours, not weeks, and it works. Let's address group decisions. When you need input from others, set boundaries. Ask 2 or 3 people you trust, hear their perspectives. Then make your own choice. Don't ask 20 people. You'll get conflicting advice and feel more confused. Too many opinions create noise. Limit input sources. Value quality over quantity. Finally, practice making small decisions quickly. Build your decision-making muscle. When you're choosing what to eat, decide in 30 seconds. When you're picking a movie, decide in 2 minutes. Train your brain that decisions don't require extensive analysis. Start small and work up to bigger decisions. You're reprogramming the pattern. In the final chapter, we're going to talk about building a brain that defaults to calm instead of overthinking. Chapter 5. Building a Calm Brain. You've learned to interrupt overthinking and make decisions. Now let's build long-term mental calm so overthinking happens less frequently. This is about changing your baseline, not just managing symptoms. Let's start with a fundamental principle. Your brain is shaped by what you practice. If you practice overthinking, you get better at overthinking. If you practice calm, you build calm. Neuroplasticity works both ways. You've been training your brain to overthink. Now you're going to train it to be calm. First, mindfulness. I know you've heard this before, but hear me out. Mindfulness isn't about eliminating thoughts. It's about changing your relationship with them. When you practice observing thoughts without engaging, you build the neural pathways for mental flexibility. You're training your brain that thoughts are just thoughts. They don't require action. They don't need to be analyzed. They can simply pass. This is the opposite of overthinking. Here's how to practice. 5 minutes daily. Sit quietly. Notice your breath. When thoughts come, which they will, label them. Thinking. Then return attention to breath. Don't judge the thoughts. Don't engage, just notice and return. This is hard at first. Your brain is used to grabbing every thought and running with it. You're teaching it a new pattern. Sit, notice, label, return. Do this daily. Over weeks and months, you'll notice thoughts have less pull. They arise, but you're not compelled to follow them. Now, cognitive reframing. Overthinkers have thinking patterns that fuel overthinking. Catastrophizing, all-or-nothing thinking, overgeneralization, mind reading. You can learn to recognize and reframe these. When you catch yourself catastrophizing, ask, what's the most likely outcome, not the worst? When you catch all-or-nothing thinking, remind yourself, there's a middle ground. This doesn't happen automatically. It's a practice. But over time, you interrupt distorted thinking patterns before they spiral. Let's talk about sleep. Overthinkers often have disrupted sleep. They lie awake ruminating, and lack of sleep makes overthinking worse. Your prefrontal cortex, which regulates thinking, functions poorly when you're sleep deprived. So you're even more prone to rumination. Protect your sleep. Create a bedtime routine. No screens an hour before bed. If you start overthinking at night, use the circuit breaker. Get up. Do something physical. Break the loop. Then return to bed. Don't lie there ruminating for hours. Exercise. Physical activity regulates your nervous system and improves your brain's ability to regulate thoughts. Overthinkers often have dysregulated nervous systems. They're in chronic low-level fight or flight. Exercise discharges that activation. It also produces neurochemicals that improve mood and reduce anxiety. You don't need intense workouts. Even walking helps. Move your body daily. This builds baseline calm. Now, reducing stimulation. Modern life is overstimulating. Constant notifications. News, social media, your brain is bombarded. This increases baseline anxiety, which increases overthinking. Intentionally reduce stimulation. Limit news consumption. Reduce social media. Create quiet time. Give your brain space to settle. Overstimulation keeps your nervous system activated. Understimulation allows it to rest. And a rested nervous system overthinks less. Let's address rumination triggers. You identified your triggers earlier. Now manage them. If uncertainty triggers overthinking, practice tolerating uncertainty. Sit with not knowing. Remind yourself that uncertainty is normal and you can handle it. If social situations trigger overthinking, prepare differently. Instead of rehearsing conversations, practice being present. If mistakes trigger rumination, practice self-compassion. Remind yourself that mistakes are human and don't define you. Managing triggers reduces the frequency of overthinking episodes. Here's a powerful practice. Gratitude. Overthinkers focus on threats and problems. This keeps the brain in negative scanning mode. Gratitude shifts focus to what's working. This isn't toxic positivity, it's balance. When you regularly acknowledge what's good, you train your brain to notice positive as well as negative. This reduces the automatic negative bias that fuels overthinking. Daily practice. Write 3 things you're grateful for. Simple, but effective over time. Now boundaries with your own thoughts. You don't have to engage with every thought. You can choose. That's a thought, I don't need to follow it. This is radical. Most people believe they must think about whatever their brain presents. You don't. You can acknowledge a thought and let it pass. Practice this. When a rumination starts, say, "Not right now," and redirect attention. You're setting boundaries with your own mental content. This builds mental autonomy. Let's talk about purpose and meaning. Overthinking often happens when people lack direction. When you don't know what you're working toward, your brain fills the space with rumination. Having purpose gives your mental energy somewhere productive to go. What matters to you? What are you building? What do you value? When you have answers to these questions and you're taking action aligned with them, you have less mental energy available for overthinking. Purpose crowds out rumination. Social connection. Overthinkers often isolate. They're in their heads, not engaging with the world, but isolation increases overthinking. You have nothing to distract from rumination. Social connection pulls you out of your head. It gives you something real to focus on. Spend time with people you trust. Have conversations. Be present. This isn't escapism. It's engagement with reality. And reality is a great antidote to rumination. Here's an important practice. Scheduled thinking time. Instead of thinking reactively all day, schedule focused thinking. 30 minutes where you actually problem solve, plan, reflect. Outside that time, when your brain wants to think about something, you say, "Not now. I'll think about that during my thinking time." This creates structure. Thinking happens in designated times, not constantly. This prevents the all-day mental churning that exhausts you. Now, self-compassion. Overthinkers are often harsh with themselves. They criticize their overthinking. "I'm so stupid for thinking about this." This creates shame. Shame increases anxiety. Anxiety increases overthinking. Break the cycle with self-compassion. "I'm overthinking because I'm anxious. That's understandable. I'm going to use a technique to interrupt it." Compassion reduces shame. This makes it easier to interrupt overthinking without adding emotional weight. Let's address medication and therapy. For some people, overthinking is a symptom of an underlying condition: anxiety disorder, OCD, depression. If your overthinking is severe, chronic, and significantly impairs your life, consider professional help. Therapy, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy, is very effective for rumination. Medication can help regulate the neurochemistry that contributes to overthinking. There's no shame in getting support. Sometimes overthinking has roots that require professional intervention. Finally, patience. You're rewiring your brain. This takes time. You won't change overnight. Some days will be better than others. That's normal. What matters is the long-term trajectory. Are you overthinking less this month than last month? Less this year than last year? That's progress. Don't judge daily fluctuations. Look at trends and celebrate small wins. You interrupted one thought loop. That's progress. You made one decision without endless analysis. That's growth. Acknowledge it. This reinforces the new patterns you're building. Building a calm brain is a practice, not a destination. You're training your brain daily. Through mindfulness, through reframing, through healthy habits, through boundaries. Each practice strengthens the calm pathways and weakens the overthinking pathways. Over time, calm becomes your baseline. Overthinking becomes the exception, not the rule. And when it does happen, you have tools to interrupt it. This is freedom, not from thoughts, but from compulsive thinking. This is what you're building. Let's bring this together. You learned what overthinking is. Repetitive, unproductive thought that doesn't lead to solutions. Your brain trying to control the uncontrollable. You learn to identify your patterns, your triggers, themes, physical sensations, thought structures. You learned 5 techniques to interrupt overthinking. Circuit breaker, 5-minute rule, decision matrix, thought labeling, worry appointment. You learn to make decisions without endless analysis. Reversible versus irreversible, 80% rule, trust your gut, values-based choosing. You learn to build a calm brain. Mindfulness, reframing, sleep, exercise, reducing stimulation, purpose, self-compassion. So here's what it all comes down to. Overthinking isn't protecting you, it's imprisoning you. It's not making you smarter or safer, it's making you anxious and paralyzed. But you're not stuck. You have tools, you have techniques, you have understanding. Now you just need to use them. Right now, think of one thought loop you run regularly. Commit to interrupting it the next time it starts. Use one technique, just one. See what happens. Notice what it feels like to break the loop, to redirect your attention, to choose calm over rumination. That's power, that's freedom, and you can do it again and again until it becomes natural. Here's what will happen. First, you'll catch yourself overthinking. You'll recognize the pattern, then you'll use a technique. It might feel awkward, that's okay. You'll interrupt the loop even briefly. That's progress. Over time, you'll catch it earlier. You'll interrupt it faster. Eventually, you'll overthink less frequently because your brain will learn it doesn't work. You have everything you need. You know why you overthink. You know your patterns, you have techniques. You have a decision framework, you have practices for building calm. Now go interrupt one loop, make one decision, practice one technique, and watch your mental freedom expand, not overnight. Gradually, but real. You've got this.